Great job. My name is Pastor Curt. I am one of the pastors around here. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we're going to talk about this one thought today. How do you live a life that truly matters? We're in 1 Corinthians 9, as I said. If you don't have your outline, you can text the word outline to 56316. If you do have your outline, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to give you some context. We're going to go verse by verse. I have the entire chapter printed on the back here. In fact, to get it on the back, they had it printed at 0.2 font. So some of you are going to be playing trombone with this. If you want the bigger font, you get outline to 56316. We're going to start in verse 12. I'm not going to do all these verses. We did that on the Bible study. It drops Wednesday at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. But what is this about? What is this about? At the 50,000-foot level, it's about the idea of living a regret-free life. No one will ever live a mistake-free life. Everyone's going to make mistakes. If you've made a mistake, raise your hand. If the mistake's sitting in the same row with you, keep your hand up. No, I'm just joking. None of us live a mistake-free life, but we can live a regret-free life. What's the difference? I played high school football. I know it doesn't look like it. I was a lineman, actually. I was at a small school, and I'm 164 pounds soaking wet, and I played right guard, not the deodorant, the position. And my sophomore year, we won the state championship, and my senior year, we were one game away from going back to the state championship. We played a little private school in Spokane, Washington, and it literally got down to the last couple series of the game. I don't know if you follow football, but when there's about 3 minutes left on the clock, if you're in the lead, and we were by 7 points, and you make one or two more first down, then you can run out the clock and win the game. We're in that exact situation. We're playing this little private school called Riverside. It's literally sub-freezing weather. It's bitter cold, eastern Washington, and they are brutalizing me the whole game. I'm just getting beat up in my little lineman position, and it comes down to it, and our starting quarterback twists his knee. He goes out of the game. The freshman quarterback comes in, and we've got to make one more first down to win this game. The coach sends in the play, and the instructions are very specific. We're going to pass the ball. We have 8 yards for the first down. We're going to pass the ball if the receiver is wide open. But if he's not wide open, just take a knee. We'll punt the ball. Our defense will go out, and our defense will win the game. We've been holding them scoreless, almost scoreless the entire game. We can win this with defense. Don't throw the ball unless he's wide open. We clap at the huddle. I go up to the line, and I look across to the guy that has just been pummeling me all game. I think his name was Mongo. Proof of evolution. I mean, he's just, and I think, somehow I've gotten the job done. He hasn't sacked my quarterback once, but I don't know if I got it in me for this one last play. I mean, I am dead. I am done. And I get down in the three-point stance, and I think this thought. You don't have to give your best effort. Just hit him once. It's a quick developing play. If you just hit him once, he won't have time to sack your quarterback. It's a quick throw. You just hit him once. You don't have to do the best you could do. Just do something. I got down the stance, and they hiked the ball, and I hit him once, and he just bowled right over me, and he's kind of going to my side. I glancing blow off him again, and it was good enough. It was good enough to keep him from sacking my quarterback. It just wasn't good enough to keep him from touching my quarterback's arm right as he threw the ball. Right as he threw the ball, he hit his elbow, and instead of the ball going to the wide open receiver for the first down and the game win, the ball went straight up. Their linebacker came under it, caught it, and ran 30 yards for a touchdown. They tied the game up. We went into overtime, and we lost. And that was the last football game I ever played. The last. I have one reoccurring dream in my life. In that dream, I'm 35 years old and 40 pounds more muscular, and I go back into that game, back into that play, and I destroy that kid. Listen, you can live with a mistake. What's a mistake? I gave it my best and it didn't work out. You can learn from a mistake. A mistake can be a very good thing in your life. You can't live with a regret. A regret is a mind cancer. It's the sort of thing where you say, what if? What if I gave it my full effort? What if I finished well? What if I actually bore down and took the pain and did what I needed to do in that moment? What if is a horrible thought. How do you live a life without what ifs? I'll tell you, other than Jesus Christ, the person who probably did this the best was the Apostle Paul. Here we are 2,000 years later, and almost every Sunday morning, some churches across the world are studying how he lived his life. And there's probably no better example of how he lived his life, what he did to live a what-if, a regret-free life, than 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Let's go ahead and go through the context here. If you want to divide this chapter up, you could divide it up into Paul's position as an apostle, Paul's rights as an apostle, and Paul's sacrifice as an apostle. He talks about himself here more than almost any other place in the New Testament. And he does it very, very specifically. He sets all that up. You could say that's step one, so he can compel them to live in a similar fashion. In other words, he wants them to live with the right goal and the right disciplines. But to do that, he talks about one deliberate decision he made among them that launched him into that regret-free life. What is that decision? If you want a more in-depth study of this whole chapter, go to the Bible study, like I said. I'm going to start in verse 12. I'm going to explain the first 11 verses to you. Then we're going to start in verse 12 because I think it's a very easy way to access the whole chapter. If you're still with me, give me an amen. Okay, verse 12 introduces the theme of the first 11 verses, and then at the second half of verse 12, he makes the big point. It's the big idea. Okay, here we go. If others have this right of support. Okay, stop right there. Who are the others? You might remember, if you've heard any of these teachings in the past, is that Corinth was a city given to professional orators. Okay, so the sophist movement is happening right now in Greek, and in Athens it's a little bit more academic. It's sophist, this means wise person. It's the philosophical movement. It's the resurgence of Greek philosophy. In Athens it's a little bit more academic. In Corinth it's a little bit more theatrical. And so Corinth was known for these incredible communicators. So the others he's talking about here are both the others in the city of Corinth that make their living speaking, and the other teachers like Apollos who have come into the Corinthian church and done some teaching. So he's like, if all of these professional speakers and teachers, including Bible teachers, if they get a salary, if they get money, I have that same right too, correct? If others have this right of support from you, shouldn't we have it all the more? Here's the big point, here it is. But we did not use this right. On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. Okay, the first 11 chapters, he gives example after example of how a worker is worth their wage. That if you do the right work, you got to be paid for it, including pastors. But he says, we didn't do that with you guys. We didn't demand that you give us honorariums or salaries or free rent or free board or fancy meals. We didn't do that. Why didn't he do that? Here's the thing you got to understand. Paul goes up to Athens. He's trained. He's trained as an orator. He's trained as a thinker. He's trained as a theologian. He's been to all the best schools. He's a highly trained individual. He goes toe-to-toe with the professional philosophers in Athens. He gets nowhere. He comes down to Corinth and he says, I'm going to change my strategy. That strategy didn't work. I realized that if I go into Corinth and I'm just another professional orator being paid by Christians, that what's going to happen is I'm going to be white noise. I'm going to be blended in with everyone else. So he goes into them and he says, listen, even though I have the right to receive financial support from you, I refuse it to do something different. What is the different thing he did? I'll explain it in a little moment. But if you want a little hint, right there next to the passage, write goat hair. But we did not use this right of compensation. On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. Don't you know that those who serve in the temple get their food from the temple, and that those who serve at the altar share in what is offered on the altar? In the same way, the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. So he's giving this example, and this is one of 3 examples he gives of how it's natural for a worker to get compensation. So the first two examples you'll find in the first 11 verses are the military example, which soldier serves without being paid, or an agricultural example, do not muzzle an ox while he's plowing the fields. And then he gives the third one I just read you, which is a religious example. The first one is an example from society overall, the second one is an example from nature, and the third one is an example from the temple system, and it would be both true of the Jewish temple and the Greek temple. So he's saying this is very normal. I should have gotten a salary from you. I should have got compensation from you. But, verse 15, I have not used any of these rights. I am not writing this in the hope that you will do such things for me. For I'd rather die than allow anyone to deprive me of this boast. The point is not you owe me back pay. The point is I did things differently, deliberately. Verse 16. For when I preach the gospel, I cannot boast, since I am compelled to preach. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. If I preach voluntarily, of my own free will, my intrinsic will, I will have a reward. If not voluntarily, I'm simply discharging the trust committed to me. In other words, I'm going through the motions. He said, this isn't about my job. This isn't about getting a paycheck. This is better, more, deeper, more important than that. Verse 18, what then is my reward for preaching to you without asking for compensation? Just this, that in preaching the gospel, I may offer it free of charge, and so not make full use of my rights as a preacher of the gospel. In other words, my reward is presenting you with an example that could change your life for all eternity. My reward is watching you change. What's Paul talking about? He's talking about intrinsic motivation versus external motivation. Listen to me, everyone. For your life to matter, you have to get to the place of intrinsic motivation. What's intrinsic motivation? That means I'm doing it because I was born to do it. I'm doing it because God carefully knit me in my mother's womb to do this. I'm doing it because God, even though I didn't deserve it, plucked me out of humanity, chose me, saved me, and gave me a calling, purpose, and direction. I'm doing it because that's what I was made from eternity to do. That's intrinsic. What's external motivation? I'm doing it because all my friends are doing it. I'm doing it so I won't look different, so I'll fit in. I'm doing it because everyone told me I should do it. I'm doing it because of fear and insecurity. I'm doing it to keep up with the Joneses. Man, you cannot live a significant life being motivated by other people's opinions. That's like living in perpetual fifth grade. You got to actually do it because your Creator called you to do it. Verse 19, let's keep going. Though I am free and not belonging to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, these are Jews again, I become more like one under the law, though I myself am not under that law, so as to win those under the law. In other words, those that are Orthodox Jews, I'm going to not offend them. I'm going to change my strategy, my vocabulary to them so that I can... so they'll have a chance to hear. Verse 21, to those not having the law, Greeks and Romans, I become like one not having the law. Though I am not free from God's law, but I'm under Christ's law. In other words, I'm not just totally free, I'm actually committed to what's Christ's law, to love others as I love myself. That's Christ's law. So he goes, I'm not free, I'm obligated to do that, but I'm going to act like a free person so that to win those that are not having the law. To the weak I become weak. To win the weak, I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the good news, the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. What does it mean to share in its blessings? I'll talk about that in point 2 of the application. Okay, let me just stop right here and talk about missional Christianity. This passage that I just read you is one of the most famous passages in the New Testament because it describes the accurate missional position of authentic Christians. What is that missional position? It's keeping two things as major values. One is the idea that we adjust our strategy or approach depending on the culture we're trying to reach. So for instance, if I was in San Francisco, I would not do a church like this because it would cost too much for property and parking. There would be just no way. You want to do something in an urban area, you've got to go more house to house. If I was, I had a friend, he's planted a church among restaurant workers. Do you know what time his Sunday morning service was? 2 a.m. Because the bars closed at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, and he'd just say, just come right before you go to, and he recognized their work schedule. That's missional. Here's the definition I give it. It says this: to modify our approach for the culture without modifying our message. It's so important. Why do we make Christmas such a big deal around here? Because we're trying to reach the culture. Why do we invite kids to come in here and tear everything up at Blue Oaks? Because we're trying to reach the culture. People are like, we shouldn't have anything on Halloween. We should all go home and fast and pray. First of all, it's such an opportunity to reach families. And second of all, you can't tell me it's God's will that I don't eat Twix that week. We modify our approach to reach the culture, but we never modify the message. The message is Jesus is fully God. I'm not going to lower him. The message is there's an ethical standard in the Bible, including how we operate sexually. We're not going to lower that. See, modify the strategy, but not the message. Are you still with me? You learn anything? Okay, we're almost done. Then we're going to get to 3 application points. Verse 24. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize. Everything Paul has done is to get them to hear that sentence. Run in such a way to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. There's going to be some hard work. They do it to get a crown that will not last. But we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and I make it a slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Why study Paul? Paul talks about himself so much in this passage. He's almost indulgent in the way he's talking about his strategy. Why does that matter to you and I? And the answer is really, really simple. Paul finished his race regret-free. Paul didn't finish his life mistake-free. Ask Barnabas, ask Timothy, ask Luke, ask the guys that hung around him. They'll tell you he made a lot of mistakes, and the Bible records some of those mistakes. But when he got on his deathbed, when he got to that moment where he was going to be martyred for Christ, he, with a clear conscience, says, I have run the race. I have finished what God called me to do. My friend, when it gets to the end, will you be filled with regrets? Or will you say, my life mattered? It's so shocking to me how quickly we forget people's lives. When they pass and all the awards and all the money and all the accolades and oh my goodness, she sung a 10-minute song on Saturday Night Live about the celebrity that broke up with her and then they're gone. Here's the Apostle Paul writing to about 100 people 2,000 years ago. And now on any given Sunday, his words are studied by 2.38 billion people. 2,000 years later. What did he do to live a life that matters? If we're going to live a life that matters, there's 3 big ideas in here. They're not difficult to get. They're not even that difficult to do once you understand how healthy and powerful they are. The first one, very first step is this: win your credibility. Delay gratification. Win your credibility, delay gratification. We put up with anything, the Apostle Paul says. Oftentimes, we're not trying to win our credibility. We're trying to win our comfortability. Oftentimes, we're not even aware what our credibility is. We're worried more about our profitability or popularity than we are about our credibility. A significant life is a life that's more worried about the integrity of your life and the credibility of your life than it is about the popularity of your life. We want things to be so easy, but no life that's significant is ever easy. You got to embrace the hardness. In fact, there's going to be hardness no matter what you seek. You got to decide, is your suffering going to be significant or is it going to be for selfish gains? It's just true. The application is simply this. You and I, to live a life that matters, it involves hard work. It involves hard work. I lost a few pounds a couple years back. I've gained them all back since. But when I lost the weight, everyone's asking me, how did you do it? What was the secret? And they wanted me to say, I got this pill, or I didn't eat carbs. And the secret was this, and here's my confession. Maybe I'll write my diet book. The secret was I exercised more and ate less. And it was hard. It was hard. Every day Oreos were speaking to me. Come, be with us. We love you. And my treadmill was speaking to me too. I hate you. You're so hard on me. You're so big and wobbly. You know, it was just hard. I'm going to write my diet book, and it's going to be called Exercise More, Eat Less. 2 sentences, that's all, the whole book. The Apostle Paul makes this decision. It's a really counter-cultural decision. He goes into Corinth and he says, instead of demanding that you give me a salary, an apartment, and 3 square meals a day, I'm actually going to not receive a single cent from you, and instead I'm going to make tents. So we know from the book of Acts that he made tents by day. Now when we think of tents, what we think of is this tent right here. We think of that nylon tent. How many have seen a tent like this? How many have almost lost your marriage over putting up a tent like this? And this is not the tent that we're talking about. The tent we're talking about is this one. This is a goat hair tent. And you can see these all over from North Africa to the Mediterranean to this day. Bedouins use these exact same tents. And this is exactly what Paul would have done. His dad was a tent maker. He learned the trade from his dad. That's the reason he could speak Greek and write in Greek and read Greek, is because he sold tents to Greek-speaking people. And the truth of the matter is, this was below him. And in the culture, it was below him. It was shocking to the Romans and Greeks in Corinth that he was doing manual labor, because manual labor was for slaves, not teachers, not orators, not scholars. But Paul said, I got to get their attention, and I'm going to do it by refusing their money and doing the work of a slave. Now, what Paul would be doing during the day is he'd be taking goat skins and mostly making repairs to existing tents. Isaiah writes about this. Isaiah 54, 2 and 3, it says, enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords. Strengthen your stakes. Now, Isaiah is talking metaphorically about the nation of Israel expanding, but we literally get an insight to how these tents operated. There was wide curtains, and there was cords, and there were stakes. And so what Paul would be doing during the day is he'd take new goat skins. Anyone here ever been around a goat? Raise your hand if you've been around a goat. There's 2 things you got to understand about goat skins. They're coarse, and they're stinky. And you know how they got the stink out of the goat skins and tanned them? They used goat brains. That's a fun job. How many, if I told you, man, the way that we're going to get more people at Christmas this year, and we're going to change their lives, and I need all the volunteers I get, right outside you're going to sign up to be on the goat brain squashing and tanning committee. But this is what the Apostle Paul did. And he would take the panels from the top where the sun damage was, and they would rotate those panels down to the curtains, and they put no goat skins up there, and he did that all day, and then he preached the word at night. To get credibility, my friend, just listen to me. We got to revive the idea of hard work around here. We're raising children and grandchildren that are not going to be equipped for the difficulties of this world because we've made them believe that there's some clever way to get through without hard work. And there is no clever way to get through without hard work. And hard work's a blessing. If you're working for the right thing. Let's go ahead and go to the point 2. A friend named Michael Mowry, he's been a long-term mentor of me, but it's my first real pastor. And when I was in high school, I made a commitment to Christ. And I went off to college, and I quickly, within like a week of being on the university campus, fell away from Christ. I started partying again, drinking, and I knew that God didn't want me to do that, but I just fell into my old habits. And I was in this class, this history class, and you had to write a term paper for the class. And the professor made a comment while he's describing the assignment. He said, someone should write a paper that shows that Jesus never existed, because there's a lot of evidence that Jesus was just a myth. And when he said that, it kind of offended me, even though I wasn't living for Christ at all. And I'm like, I'm going to write the opposite paper. I'm going to write a paper about the proof that Jesus really did exist. He was a historical figure. So part of the assignment is you had to do interviews with experts. So I got out the guide for all the clubs on campus, and I found this guy, Michael Mallory, who's in charge of a Christian group on campus. And I called him up. I said, can I interview for this paper? He said, sure, I'd love to do it. Come by my office tomorrow. I come into the office, and some of you that are younger won't get this, but if you're a little older, you will. He was a total Jesus person. Do you know what I'm talking about? He had this big, huge beard. You know, he made Christian look like he was well kept. I mean, just big beard. And he had patchouli oil and denim on denim and a big guitar in the corner. And I was like, oh man, he's like, dude, come in. I was like, this guy's not going to know his stuff. His brain was fried on drugs, and then he became a Christian, you know? And I sat down and I asked him, is there any evidence that Jesus was a historical person? And boom. He just starts sharing all this stuff, reference materials. He's throwing books at me. He knew his stuff, and it was phenomenal. I'm just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. At the end of it, I was like, this is, I've never heard any of this. This is incredible. You're a really smart guy. He said, thanks, I really appreciate it. Because I said, well, I got to go. And he goes, wait. You asked me some questions. Can I ask you a question or two? So I was like, okay. He said, I know what you're writing about, but I want to know, do you believe that Jesus was real, Curt? Do you personally believe that? Well, she said, yeah. I believe he's the Lord. And he looked at me and he said, are you living that way? I said, yes. Proving in my heart right then that I wasn't, because I lied to him. It's a total lie. That one question, my friends, that one question I couldn't get out of my head. And it's not exaggeration to say that from that question to this day, it's why I'm serving Christ. I'm here today because someone had the courage and the kindness to ask me that question about how I was living and whether I was really following Christ. You know, it's funny, I notice hands. Do you notice hands? I notice people's hands. Part of it is because I was an art major and it's hard to draw hands. We worked a lot on hands. Part of it, I don't know, it's just a little focus I have. Like, first of all, I notice all of our campuses, you walk around right after our little outreach that happens around Halloween, you know, with fall festival or trunk or treat. You go around the campus and there's sticky kid hand prints everywhere. Every window has got some, you know, butter-fingered kid print on it. And I love it. I mean, here at Blue Oaks, it's a disaster for like 24 hours after that event. And you guys got more teethers than tithers around here. I mean, it's just sticky handprints all over. And then I was at the Granite Bay campus yesterday, and I noticed how many people are just working hard. All these volunteers helping put up Christmas, all these hands hanging garland and all that. And then we had the relationships retreat like last week. That's our middle school ministry where we take middle schoolers and we teach them about sexuality and relationship according to the Bible. And I was at the relationships retreat. It reminded me a couple years ago, and I'm just saying hi to the parents as they're picking up their kids at the end. And this little girl comes out. She's 12-year-old, 8th grader, and she comes out and just the first thing she does is just grab her daddy's hand. And they're walking to the parking lot. And I'm like, there's something powerful about a hand held. There's something powerful about a hand. I didn't fully put it together why I'm so fascinated by hands until this lady stopped me at Christmas last year. I'm going into the Christmas service and I'm running late, and she's, Pastor Curt, I got to talk to you. And I kind of give her the body language. I'm kind of late already. And she's like, I got to tell you this. I said, what is it, my friend? She said, I'm serving at the I raise my hand table. I said, oh, thank you for doing that. It's so important. She goes, you know why I'm serving at the I raise my hand table? Because 6 years ago, I came to a Christmas service and I raised my hand. And every year I serve at the I raise my hand table, it reminds me of all that God has done for me. And I just realized it. Every week I get this gift that you guys don't get. I stand up here, and I'm going to do it at the end of this talk. And I say, if there isn't someone fully submitted to Christ, I'm going to pray a prayer and invite you to give your life back to God. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand so I can pray over you that you'd lean into that decision. And every week, 30 plus years, people say, Curt, sometimes you say, I see that hand. Thank you for that hand. Do you ever make that up just to get people going? Never make that up. No, honestly, I never do. And some services I'll say, has anyone here? Raise your hand. And no one raises their hand. And some services, it's just one hand. And in a weird way, those are almost the best. Just one hand's worth it. Sometimes they put their hand right up. Sometimes they're like, okay. Sometimes they're like, I got you right here. But there's never a time where it grows old for me. Because every time I see that hand, it reminds me of my hand. What God did in my life. Here's the point, write this in. Win your world, change a life forever. You cannot live a life that matters without it being a life that helps people find Christ. You can't live a life that matters that's only concerned with your life. You can't live a life that matters that's only concerned with this life. On the other hand, when somehow in a miracle God uses you to get someone else to lift their hand, and it's real easy. We make it so easy around here. All you have to do is say, hey, I'm going to swing by at 6:30. We're going to the 7 o'clock Christmas service or Easter or even a weekend service. All you have to do is include someone, and God can use you in changing a life forever. What's the application? A life that matters points others towards eternity. Man, you can have so many mistakes in your life, but if you get to the end of it and say, I pointed as many people as I could towards the love, acceptance, and forgiveness of Jesus Christ, you are going to live a life that matters, and you're going to live a life without regret. But if you are so busy and so distracted, you cannot see the person next to you that desperately needs to know that they have a Father in heaven who loves them and knows their name and knows every hair on their head. When our lives become significant is when we start seeing the people around us the way Christ does. And this gives me to my very, very last point, which is win your race, finish well. Run in such a way to get the prize. I had the privilege about 4 weeks ago of preaching the Sunday morning service at Camp Pendleton to 300 Marine recruits. Exactly. So when they go to Camp Pendleton, they've already been in boot camp for 6 weeks. They're already really tired, and they separate them into weeks. So there's week 1, they just arrived at Camp Pendleton. Week 2, I think week 3 is the target week, the shooting range week, and then week 4 is the hardest week. It's where they're going to go into the tear gas chamber. It's where they do like a 72-hour endurance thing where they're only allowed to sleep like 20 minutes at a time, and they're all eating MREs on the field. It's very, very grueling. And you'd think that the people that have been there 4 weeks and are about to go have the toughest week would be the ones that were the most tired. But the truth is, you get in the room, and the first week recruits are the ones that are most tired. While you're preaching, they're like, oh, amen. They're just barely hanging on. Second week's a little bit better. Third week's a little bit better. The fourth week is incredible. They're barely slept. They're up before dawn before you get there on their day off doing an incredible workout. And you get in there and you go, turn in your Bibles. Yes, sir, yes. Do you think God? Yes, sir, yes. I mean, you guys are good ameners. You got nothing on fourth week Camp Pendleton, people. I mean, it gets you fired up. You want to preach to the first weekers, you find yourself over there and goes, can God do this? Yes, sir, yes. Is he a God of miracles? Yes, sir, yes. Hurry, let go. I was ready to go in the military. And I got done with the chapel, and I asked the chaplain, I said, this doesn't make sense. How come the first week people are more tired than the fourth week people? He said, easy. He said, by the fourth week, they've figured out that they're more powerful than their fatigue. They've learned that they're tougher than they thought. They've accepted the idea that if they train with all of their might, they can overcome any obstacle. Let me tell you something about the God who created you and what he put in you. You are stronger than you think. You are tougher than you think. You can go farther than you think. It's all just right up here. My friend, you get knocked down, get back up. If it's fatigue time, you lean in. Don't live your life with a regret. You make a mistake, it's okay. Learn, get up, go. But don't give up before you even finish. Don't make an excuse before you even try. Because without God, you're strong. That's just because God makes strong things. With God, you're not just strong. You're a conqueror. You're an overcomer. There's no obstacle. There's no opposition that you and Jesus cannot have more power over and more strength over. In the end, when you come across that finish line, all of those trials will be in your past. And your life will be a life that matters. Here's my last application. A life that matters gets back up and gets going. A regret only becomes a regret if you let it. One day I had this epiphany about that football. It caused my heart to ache. I didn't like it. I didn't like to think about it. And then one day I thought this thought and changed everything. I'm going to tell that in a sermon about every 6 months. My friend, you may be getting down and you're already making excuses and you're feeling tired. Fill your lungs with air. Open your eyes wide. And invite Christ into your life. What was Christ thinking about in his worst moment? As he was on the cross and his body literally was riddled with pain, what was he thinking about? I'll tell you what he was thinking about. He was thinking about you. He cried out, "Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." And at the very end, he cried out, "It is finished. I've paid the price." You were the focus of Jesus when he was at his most fatigued and pain-filled. What should your focus be when you're at your most fatigued? Just the opposite. When you put your mind on Christ and you draw upon his strength, my friend, you can overcome and live a life that matters. Can I ask you to bow your head and close your eyes right now? I'm going to do what I promised a little bit earlier. I'm just going to really briefly ask if there's anyone here that has not fully surrendered their life to Christ. If that's you, I'm going to pray a brief little prayer. The exact words of this prayer is not what's important. When you pray it with me, surrendering is what's important. I'll pray it out loud. You pray it in your heart, right where you're there, right where you're sitting. Say this directly to God. God, I need you in my life. God, I want to live a life that truly matters. So God, today, this life you've given me, I give it back to you fully. I receive your gift of forgiveness. Thank you for Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. I accept that forgiveness. Now, God, show me who I am. Show me what you created me for, and let me follow you every day and in every way. If that's you and you just prayed that prayer with me, either a recommitment or a first-time commitment, it doesn't matter. If that's you, I'm not going to make you come forward or stand up. I'm just going to ask you to let me pray for you. A blessing that would cause you to lean into that prayer. If that's you and you just prayed that prayer with me, would you do me this favor? Would you just lift your hand up and say, "Yeah, pray for me, Pastor Curt." Put it up high. Thank you, little girl. Father, I thank you for every single hand that's gone up, every single decision that is made. I pray just as happened to me would happen to them, that this prayer today would start a journey 10, 20, 30, 40 years long of faithfully following you, discovering exactly who they are, living a life that matters. God, bless them with a significant life. I ask it in Jesus' name. And not just for those that raise their hand, but as a church, especially going into this season, use us to point others towards eternity. And I ask it in your name, Lord. And everyone said, God bless you guys.